I am Jason Abraham, the Shadow Teacher 33, and no surprise, I'm a big Star Wars nerd. And the first movie I ever remember seeing as a young child in the movie theater was Empire Strikes Back. And the themes of Star Wars, the theme of the hero's journey, the theme of connecting with this consciousness that is in everything, a life force, the Force. These ideas stuck with me throughout my life and shaped the person I've become today. And today, I want to talk about the alluring power of the dark side of the Force. Yoda says, fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Suffering leads to the dark side of the Force. And this human condition, this human experience of suffering, when we identify with this crude matter, this body, believing that our body is what's experiencing life, believing that our minds are what experiencing life, and we identify with all of this, this leads to suffering, as opposed to having the knowing that there's a consciousness beyond all this that's experiencing life through the mechanism of the body, through the mechanism of the mind. And all of this suffering is essentially rooted in attachment to the false self, attachment to that which is temporary. And you see this play out profoundly in the drama of Star Wars, in the fall of Anakin Skywalker, the fall of the Chosen One, the fall of the one who was believed to bring balance to the Force. You see in the Star Wars prequels, Anakin has admirable traits. He's very loyal to the people he loves. He's loyal to his mother. He's loyal to his wife. He takes a wife, which is forbidden for the Jedi. The Jedi in the Star Wars, for those who are not Star Wars people, the Jedi are essentially like a monk order, and their dedication is to the Force. So getting involved in worldly relationships is forbidden, and Anakin breaks the rules. He is the one who still has human passions. He is essentially the story of humanity. What you see in Anakin Skywalker is the fall of man. And his worldly attachments, again, which are part of the human experience, the attachments to people he loves, his desire to protect and take care of people he loves, essentially leads to his downfall as he gets premonitions about the death of his wife, the person who he loves the most. He's willing to do whatever he can to stop it. And this willingness, or this desire to stop what he believes is inevitable, or I should say, what he believes is coming if he doesn't make a different choice, opens him up to the lure of power, the seduction of the dark side of the Force, the seduction of using power for the ego's sake to alter the course of events from this very small perspective of the ego, of the limited consciousness. And this is the gate of how the evil force, the Emperor Palpatine, I guess he's not the Emperor, Senator Palpatine, Darth Sidious, the Dark Lord, who becomes Emperor of the Galaxy, exploits a very passionate, very fearful Anakin Skywalker. He exploits his attachment and what Anakin believes is his desire to do good and save someone he loves, but ultimately at the expense of the bigger picture, at the expense of how other forces in the world play out, or the force, how the whole life process works. And when we want to control from our egoic perspective, when we're moving out of this place of fear, the fear of loss, this attachment, then a lot of the times we manifest exactly what we don't want. There's some law of attraction wisdom as what happens with Anakin. As he moves from this place of fear, he essentially creates a future that he loses everything. And he turns on his mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, out of anger. Obi-Wan is forced to battle him, and where he severs his limbs, and Anakin is left burning in a lake of fire, still alive. And what's left of him is picked up by the Emperor and transformed into Darth Vader, this being of pure darkness that is more machine than man. A being that is very powerful, that has great power in the Force, can choke someone out by just moving a finger, choke someone out at a distance, can actually move and manipulate an object as large as a spaceship, a being of just such vast power, but a being that's rooted in suffering, a being that is forced to live on a life support system, a being that can't breathe on his own and can't see with his own eyes. And this being that's so strong in the dark force has such a miserable existence, miserable life for choosing the dark path, for choosing egoic power and not being able to let go, not being able to trust and let go, follow his path and allow things to be. We see the power of the dark side of the Force. The dark beings are corrupted. The Emperor is basically with this old being that's withered away. The dark side is literally corrupting his being, withering his physical form. Though an immensely powerful being, still a being who is rooted in suffering. His existence is miserable, though very powerful. And again, these are the great lessons. In our world, we hear about celebrities, people who gain the keys of the kingdom of worldly power and are living from their egos. They can do whatever they want, any kind of egoic whim. Some of these celebrities, people who are living on that top echelon, they do, but yet it's never enough. Never enough. They are always miserable and always chasing more, and eventually these people sometimes commit suicide. They take their own lives. But again, kind of going back to what I said, believing that the body and the mind are the truth of experience, and believing that's where our suffering comes from, then they are deluded in believing that unaliving themselves is going to end their suffering, as the suffering is coming from this consciousness that's beyond and the misalignments. So these lessons, again, from Star Wars, the lessons of the dark side, the lessons of seduction from the ego, of wanting to manifest from the ego, wanting to manifest from a place of fear, from a place of attachment. These are all lessons that we learn and we experience. I've experienced misery and suffering in my own life by being attached to old ways of being. Right now on the planet, many people are suffering because they are losing so much of their old identity. People are falling out of their lives. Like, that's my case, relationships are falling out left and right. People are losing jobs. All kinds of crises going on with so many people I know on a personal level. And it's this old way of being stripped. So we can allow this process in grace and surrender and letting go, because it's going to happen, or we can fight it. We can use this mechanism of control and maybe even be successful, maybe tap into that dark side and get some of what we think we want. But the result still going to be more suffering. So the lesson for me this year has been in letting go, allowing myself to let go, allowing myself to feel and grieve the death of old ways of being, the loss of people I cared about falling out of my life, the death of old identities, loss of jobs. I've had all of it this year, but being able to move forward in grace and trust that I'm on path. Trust that there's a consciousness that is bigger than these events, bigger than my body, bigger than my mind, that is guiding me. When I can tap into that consciousness and allow it to do what it wants to do, to play and work with what is, accepting what is, going into that vibration of acceptance and willingness, which is essentially this detachment from the material circumstances, then we can move up to literally being beings of love and joy, peace, those higher vibrations, and having those vibrations be what guides us and moves us in the world. So with that being said, that's my intent. That's my intent for you. I wish you blessings. I wish you peace. I wish you the ability to learn and see the lessons your shadow, the lessons of suffering teach us, so that we can avoid a path. I shouldn't say avoid, so we can allow a different path to unfold for us, as opposed to taking the path of the dark side of the Force like Darth Vader did. Or Anakin Skywalker, I should say. I'm ending this transmission. I'll see you on the other side.